You're listening to WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. On my line right now, I've got Mark from the Progressing America blog. Good morning, Mark. How are you this morning?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
And, I follow your blog. In fact, you've been blogging about progressivism, and I think I read your first one back in November of 2010 when you were talking about Philip Drew. What brought you to trying to investigate Philip Drew?
Well, if you don't mind, I would mention, I guess, a potential competitor talk radio host, Glenn Beck, on Fox, started talking about all these different books and stuff, and at first it was like, this is old stuff, but all the puzzle pieces kept fitting, so I started writing stuff down, and it's been building ever since.
Well, I see that, and from your original Philip Drew, you created an audio book about it?
Yes. What I've done is it's pretty much just follow the script. It's not it's the word. It's the book word for word as it appears in the pages.
And I have to admit, myself, I think I read Cliff Notes of Philip Drew when I was in high school. Back when our teachers used to try to expose us to a lot of stuff, but I kind of regret that I didn't actually read it. But I remember the overview of what it was, and I remember enough about it to be able to go past the test about it. But tell us the connection to Philip Drew and with the presidents here in the United States and where we're at right now, including these crazy amendments, like the 16th, 17th, and 18th Amendments, and how those things were rooted in some of the problems we're facing today here, thanks to the advent of progressivism.
It has to do with administration. These progressives have, for a century, been writing in their books where they don't believe so many people are looking, that they want groups of experts and so forth that are unaccountable to the people, and that is in Philip Drew as well. But things that I've talked about on my blog before is Woodrow Wilson has talked about that, and so have many others.
Well, now some of the things that I find very interesting, and of course I followed Glenn Beck also, is some of the stuff I find him to be. I find it to be interesting, kind of in the same way I find even things I don't agree with all the time, even like our program Democracy Now! While there's some things that make me very uncomfortable with it, I learn a lot from listening to these folks, and I kind of feel that way about learning from Glenn Beck and learning actually about some of the old movers and shakers back at the turn of the century from the 1800s to the 1900s.
Well, there's been a few things of Glenn's that I've disagreed with about as well, but I think that I've come a lot closer in the sense that once I started reading things, he started talking about Philip Drew, and I'm like, this doesn't, I don't see how it is, but you read the book and it's like all the answers are here. And it's the same thing with the Storm Manifesto, the Van Jones book. It's the same thing with Herbert Crowley. I've read some things from him, Woodrow Wilson. You could just go right down the list on all these things. When you actually start to read the content that he's recommending people read, all the answers are there, and most of it fits.
And again, these people, they want us to progress away from our U.S. Constitution. Our U.S. Constitution was on the mandate of the individual was the highest level, and we give consent, very limited consent, to be governed for very limited and specifically enumerated reasons. We don't want government in our face, but the way that these people see it, they want to be, they kind of want to replace themselves with what we freed ourselves with as tyrants and kings. And in essence, just like the king always thought that he knew what was best for us by who his mommy and his daddy's sperm donor was, that made for good leaders. I mean, unfortunately, we got a big line of that going here in the U.S. when I see these family dynasties, and I kind of felt that way even about the Bush family when of all the people we got here in the United States, the best the Republican Party could do was Junior Bush. I mean, what's with all this stuff?
Well, I mean, I was just listening to something from Michael Bloomberg this morning where he's talking about all these soda drinks that he's going to, and his words are exactly, we're going to force you to do such and such. And I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing that was written about 100 years ago. Woodrow Wilson, in one of his books, said that, he's talking about the Constitution as political witchcraft. It's arrogance is what it is. They believe that they know better than we do, and they're going to force us to see it their way. And to put it in a monarchical sense, I don't know if I think we've progressed past, to use the word progressive. I think we've progressed past a monarchical type of system. But if they can regulate things the way Cass Sunstein is doing, then we can keep our names on the titles of our deeds and so forth. They'll just tell us, you're going to do it this way, you're going to do it that way, you're going to do it the other way, and so on and so forth.
You're absolutely right. And I take a look at some of the stuff I reported earlier this morning about even, down at the township level where you think you'd have some of the tightest control of government, where they put it to referendum to the voters in Michigan that to go put wind turbines up on people's private land, and a bunch of investors, they went and bought property where they wanted to locate some wind turbines. But, of course, they're all out-of-state people. They don't have a vote in that part of the township. Well, the township overwhelmingly rejected it, a 61% rejection of putting these wind turbines in. And don't the township board, in collusion with another township and with their county board, they decided, well, these people just don't know what's good for them, so they've gone and gerrymandered the township by interconnecting different properties, and they've gone and made it so they actually surround some people's houses that were opposed to the these wind turbines to go and redo a township around it, and again, the not in my backyard crowd is telling everybody else how to live in their yard. So they don't even live in their township, but now they've taken the land, annexed it to go and say, well, this is what we want you to do with your land in that wind turbine situation. And of course, they're using the state of Michigan adopted this UN Agenda 21 program, which gives big government the right to go and make the decisions for the children, I guess, is their thing. And again, we got the people in the UN, a few of them have got actually, functioning democracies that got elected people. But I mean, for the most part, the UN's loaded with despots and dictators, and this is what we're getting out of it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I don't know much about that story you're talking about in Michigan. I heard the tail end of it this morning on your show, but I do recognize the arrogance. And that's the thing that these progressives do, is if you tell them no, they're just going to find another way. I mean, Nancy Pelosi herself said about the health care bill, if we can't, I remember the exact wording. She said something like, we're going to pole bolt in. If that doesn't work, we're going to parachute in. If that doesn't work, we're going to go under the wall. We're going to find a way. That's what progressives do. They're going to keep doing it until they get what they want.
Well, and going back to these great progressive things, and in fact, originally I was going to go talk a little bit about John Dewey. The Dewey Decimal System is what we always want to live, but he was a great progressive. I wanted, and in fact, I'll stay on my thing now. Tell us a little bit about Dewey, and in fact, there's a couple of great audio books to learn about the Possibilities of War by John Dewey.
Yeah, the possibilities of the social possibilities of war by John Dewey is he's basically just had a mind freeze. I apologize. He's basically talking about how World War I gives them the opportunity to centrally plan American life. He's talking about how private property. He talks about private property and how that is a potential disease.
Yeah, well, and it's always the private property of the little guy as opposed to the private property of the guys that are part of the big group that are part of the in crowd with the progressive circle, isn't it?
Pretty much. I'm bringing up the Social Possibilities right now. That way I have a, it's been a while since I've read it. That's why you caught me off guard.
Okay, and I guess everybody can know this is pretty much, we didn't discuss anything about what our agenda was either, and I tend to like fly all over stuff. Of course, I've been following your stuff, and there was articles that I've read and jumped back to. And in fact, to give you a clue, then once you pull up your article there about the social possibilities of war with John Dewey, some of the other stuff, about, at least in my book, I look at it as, income tax was again, sold on that class warfare type of rhetoric, which, they're only going to be taxing the rich. Well, in essence, the rich they own the politicians, so they're always protected from their wealth as opposed to income, and they will never, this income tax system, to me, that all it did was just go and enslave the masses here in the United States. And between that and once we got the direct election of senators, I mean, you call our dear senator who was making sure that when he was in the secret meetings on the banking collapse, during breaks he bolted his chubby little butt down the hallway and made phone calls to his brokers to go and make sure that he wasn't going to lose any money while the rest of us took a bath on his insider information, And this guy's totally non-responsive, and I'm talking about Senator Dick Durbin. He's our senator from Illinois. You call his office, you never get, if you get an answer on the phone, it's going to be then go eventually to a voicemail, and the voicemail box is full. I mean, this is the way that these people treat us, and shame on us, because they're supposed to be our employees and working for us, but they tend to treat us like they're our overlords. Anyway, are you ready to talk about the Dewey and the social possibilities of war and how war can bring about progressivism?
Yeah, I have that up. I've been reading through a little bit of it, but I can obviously only brush up on it so much. But one of the things you talk about is how, I'm going to paraphrase here a little bit, he says, the war has made it customary to utilize collective knowledge and skill of scientific experts in all lines and organizing them for community ends. And this right here goes back to Philip Drew, because he's talking about a group of experts sitting around and doing a bunch of organizing and saying, well, we're going to do it this way no matter what the people want. This is the reason why I have kept on doing this, is because in all these different places with all these different people, and there's progressives in the Republican Party as well.
God, yeah.
They both share a similar mindset. They want to have a group of experts, typically not accountable to the people, that are systematic, that are quote-unquote scientific, and they're essentially planning society. And you had mentioned class warfare. They're doing more than just class warfare. I mean, Obama with Eric Holder is doing racial warfare. I mean,
yeah.
with the Black Panthers, what state was that? Was that Pennsylvania?
Right, in Philadelphia.
I think it was Pennsylvania, Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philadelphia at the polling places.
Yeah, I mean, they're pitting race against race. They're doing class warfare, but I mean, back in Woodrow Wilson's day, you could even say they did ideological warfare, because they had the Red Scare back then. The original Red Scare was under Woodrow Wilson, and I think that there's at least a potential. Here's the way I originally looked at it was, well, Woodrow Wilson's not a communist. That's too simple. Even though Woodrow Wilson was not a communist, that really doesn't mean a whole lot of anything. He was still a centralized planner. The fact that he says, well, I don't like the central plan that the communists have, doesn't mean that he's on the side of liberty. What that means is that he has his own plan. He thinks his plan is better than what the communists have.
Yeah, how right you are on the way that they've been playing this thing. And in fact, I had a guest a couple of weeks ago. We talked about civil war and how people that want to go and use it to go and destroy society will either use class warfare, they'll use religious warfare by putting those factions against each other, or you'll use racial warfare, or they'll use urban and rural warfare. Again, they got this down to a science on how to divide people, and that's what they like to do, is they like to try to divide us in any way they can. And obviously the race card is a very sensitive one in this nation because of I mean, there are some people that are racist, but I mean, there's always going to be some people that are racist no matter what you do. And the best thing is, for us 99% that don't support racism, we just kind of ridicule the 1% that are racist. But unfortunately, that doesn't seem to happen, does it?
It doesn't. And as far as the race card goes, I mean, that was one of the big reasons why I chose to make The Colored Patriots of the American Revolution my next audiobook, because I'm not going to be so arrogant as to say that I can change the world, but the book Colored Patriots is a book that David Barton has talked about a lot, and there's a lot of good stories in that book.
Yes, there are.
They're very much counter to all these stories of victimhood and so forth. All that you hear about the founding fathers is, well, they're a bunch of old racist white guys with a bunch of they're rich, and they're rich. We can't forget that they're rich, with a bunch of powdered wigs, and these guys didn't know a thing about anything. And blacks have been hated on for 200 years, and there's a lot of stories that are all true. Look at America treated black people very badly, but to say that that's all that there was is not true. And having a book like this just sitting on a server somewhere, and nobody is taking it apart and saying, look at this story, listen to this story, let's talk about this story. I'm going to change that. I'm going to make sure that all the stories that are in that book are available on YouTube. And I think that at least, it probably only in a small way, but it can help to change the racial tone by saying, hey, wait a second, black people do have a stake in America. Some of the big heroes of the founding era, like Peter Salem, for example, was the hero of Bunker Hill.
Yep.
Yep. I mean, it is what it is.
And in fact, one of the things that the big shockers is, I mean, there was black slaveholders in this country. There were white slaves in this country. I mean, it used to be considered you either murdered your enemies at war when they surrendered to you, or you took them in as slaves. And we had a huge slave corps in the southern United States that were French patriots that took up arms against the British when that were allied with other Indian nations. And we had this French and Indian War because some of the treaties we were bound by with Indians that we would go to war with, and the French were bound with treaties to go to war with other Indian tribes, to defend them. And when we both got brought into that, the French lost, so they were sold into slavery. And, my own ancestors, they became Cajuns because they were from Arcadia, which is now part of Canada, and they were sold into slavery to go work down in the cotton and sugar plantation fields down in Louisiana area. And so, I mean, how often do you hear the story of white slaves that were pre-Revolutionary War slaves in the United States?
You don't. I mean, there's so much of this has been erased from history. That's kind of what I'm trying to do is I shouldn't say all of it. I apologize. I woke up with a little bit of a cough this morning. A lot of it has been erased from history in the sense that you just don't hear it anymore in colleges or in schools and so forth. And, someone has to sit around and say, hey, wait a second, we can do something with this. And, Glenn is doing what he's doing. David Barton is doing what they're doing. These guys are doing a lot of great work. But this is what I want to do. At first, recording audiobooks was, it was hard. It was time consuming, and I wasn't getting very good results from it. But having stuck with it, I've found it to be very enjoyable.
Well, and some of the other things, there was some good reasons here in the United States after our revolution from the crown. We encouraged revolution elsewhere. It started up in France, but what we didn't expect was the unintended consequences, the way that the revolution from France ended up moving into Haiti. And when the southern plantation owners saw the results of what happened in Haiti, where all of the former slaveholders, no matter how nice they were, or how rotten they might have been to their slaves, just because of by their skin color, they were all slaughtered in part of the Haitian Revolution, and this was the stuff that was then peddled to. I mean, and you're going to have your rightful fears of this if you think, holy cow, if we let all these slaves loose, look at what's going to happen to us, just like what happened down there in Haiti. And these people dug in their heels pretty solidly that they didn't want these black slaves to be freed, did they?
Well, no, I don't think they did. But I mean, it's not anybody's place. It's not anybody's place to dictate to somebody else.
Well, that's for sure.
That's where we've gotten today. Is revolution to the founding fathers was we're going to move away from tyranny and move towards liberty. But for the most part, in most of history, not just modern but ancient, most revolutions have caused death and despair and tyranny.
Now, I don't know if you're prepared to go talk about dictatorship of the Constitution, because this was another great one that I liked when you were talking about Herbert Crowley's book Progressive Democracy and how to go and reshape the Constitution into in essence making it into like a monarchy, which is one of the things that the founders were pretty steady that they didn't know what to call the leader, because the last thing they wanted to do was to call what became called as president or as a king.
Yeah, well, I haven't read the totality of Crowley's second book, Progressive Democracy. I haven't read the full of it. I'm trying to bring up my blog page now.
Okay, well, go ahead and refresh yourself. And again, it was a good read, and in fact, for people that may not have the time to go and sit down and read stuff, but can get stuff and like maybe listen to it on their Kindle devices as they're traveling in their cars or while they're commuting to and from work. Your audiobooks are available out there, aren't they?
There are for some of these. That's what I've been hoping to highlight, is that you don't have to rely on some news reporter that's not going to tell you the facts anyways. I mean, you got all these anarchists at all these Occupy Wall Street protests, and nobody ever stops to say, well, what does that black flag mean? Well, what does that mean? What does that hammer and that sickle over there mean? Typically, half the time they don't even put it on TV, but from time to time, you'll see a little bit of it. They just gloss over it. So there's no educational element there, but you can educate yourself. Anybody can educate themselves by either reading or, in some of these cases, audiobooks. And you don't have to rely on a journalist to do it for you. You don't have to rely on some professor that doesn't want you to read this kind of thing anyways. And what I've tried to do with my blog page is I only put out highlights and so forth, but it gives you an idea of what's in the book. As far as progressive democracy goes, the thing that I blogged about was how he talks about the monarchy of the word.
Right.
When the context of the monarchy of the word is the Constitution. He did not like the fact that the Constitution was a rock solid document. They wanted 100 years ago. They wanted fundamental change.
Yes.
Obama's not the first. He might be the first one to say it that way, but it's certainly not a new concept.
That's correct. And to be fair to you and to our listeners, I mean, you're a prolific writer. I mean, for 2012, you've got 97 articles out there written. For 2011, you wrote 64 different articles. At least from taking a look at your blog archive, and I may be adding that up wrong, but you write an awful lot of stuff, and to go and ping on you for something that you wrote back in July of 2011 is probably kind of it's kind of almost setting you up for failure. I'm feeling kind of bad with the way I'm running this. I should probably just let you go in and run off on in a tangent, because chances are we can then progress this instead of me danging into these things. But I take a look back at it, and there was, in fact, that one of the things I did send you with an email conversation when we were talking about some stuff that you had posted already was, obviously there was big money. There's big money behind the progressives these days, and these are people that, again, they think that they have the best ideas to make the world all live in harmony. Some people say it's Bilderbergs and things like that. Chances are it could be, maybe not. I like to look at it as back in the progressive area that William Randolph Hearst and his competitors were some of the people that were some of the big financiers and pushers of progressivism. If it wasn't for William Randolph Hearst, our first progressive president, which would have been Teddy Roosevelt, a Republican. Teddy did some good things, but it's a lot of the other stuff that he did that set us up for making sure that we ended up with a Woodrow Wilson as a president who really took us another level on it and got us into World War I, which then set us up for failure for a World War II. But anyway, I'll throw it back over to there. You want to go back to the William Randolph Hearst and other people that might have been the early progressive financiers and I guess lapdog media for them?
Well, something I haven't posted about yet, I've got it in my huge stack. It seems like my stack is growing. It never stops growing. I can't post faster than the stuff that I find. But from what I am able to find, William Randolph Hearst was a progressive. A lot of people say, well, that's proof of the conservative media and all this other stuff. It's not. The guy, if I remember correctly, he even either ran as a Democrat on a ticket, or he was a big supporter of various people. What was the other thing that you mentioned? I apologize.
Well, I threw William Randolph Hearst one in there, and how he was just a big Teddy Roosevelt pusher, and anything that Teddy Roosevelt could do no wrong. And of course, Teddy Roosevelt, the only thing bigger than his girth was his ego. And when it came to going and run as a third-party person, it pretty much assured that we were going to get stuck with Woodrow Wilson as president. Kind of reminds me of Bill Clinton slipping himself in under the wire with Ross Perot.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, he was a supporter. You can look at people a century ago. Well, someone was a supporter of Teddy Roosevelt and someone else was a supporter of Woodrow Wilson. In the end, almost all of them ended up supporting whoever was the progressive that ended up winning.
Yep.
And part of that is because, one of the things that Roosevelt stood for, Woodrow Wilson ended up implementing.
Yeah.
Woodrow Wilson was either directly did the things that Theodore Roosevelt wanted, or he took it to the next level. And that goes back to what I had mentioned earlier about progressives have a certain plan to centrally, they have a certain way that they want to centrally plan society.
A lot of our listeners, they're going to be turned off entirely with Glenn Beck, but I think it's at the London School of Economics, and it's thanks to Glenn Beck's TV show where he showed this big stained glass window, I guess. Is that correct? Is that at London School of Economics where they got the just like the disciples standing around Christ type of thing? These guys are all standing around an anvil with a fire with the earth that they've pulled out of the earth, where they've made it like just overheated from warfare, and then they're taking a hammer and hammering it back into the shape that they wanted. Is that at London School of Economics?
I don't know where it's at currently, the Fabian window. I'm pretty sure it's been there before. Yeah, I think it is. It's at the LSE.
I have to say, up until my being exposed to Glenn Beck and him going and bringing this up about with progressives, because I always, in fact, I remember when I was in high school in Cleveland, Ohio, talking a little bit about what we did in the Coast Guard and things like that. I like to think of it as for those that don't want to go out and play Boy Scout and camp with guns for a weekend, for the reserves, for people that want to go and save lives, do like I did and go join the Coast Guard, and we do our part to go and help keep the water clean and all that other stuff. And I remember talking with one of the 8th graders there in class, at this grade school I was talking with, and the one young lady told me that she was a progressive, and I was kind of like flipped over hearing here this is this 8th grader telling me that she's a progressive, and I started, going, man, where do they get this? You know, do they just like the name being cool? And that was one of the things that Glenn Beck, you know, caught on like about a year or two later when I was listening to him talking about progressivism and, you know, him ridiculing a caller that says, well, she likes being a progressive because the name sounds cool. Could remind me of that 8th grader there in Cleveland, Ohio, talking to me. And you know, that up until that point, you know, when like Hillary Clinton had said she was a progressive, and my Congress critter back here in Illinois, Danny K. Davis, he described himself as a progressive. Now he's totally come out of the closet and told us that, you know, I mean, he used to sound like a Black Rush Limbaugh whenever he's talking to the people back home, but he voted, you know, 180 out from that. But you know, now he's dyed in the wool Marxist socialist, and he comes about it, and he was one of Barack Obama's first big supporters, you know, so I've been obviously leery of Barack Obama since the moment he came and spoke at our congressional town hall meeting, you know.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. So many people, you can typically ask 10 people what they think of progressivism is, and you'll get 10 different answers. And a lot of it has to do with the fact of how they have removed themselves from the history books. It's hard to say that when Hillary Clinton said I'm a progressive, like the early 20th century progressives. I mean, that second part of the phrase really is the operative phrase, just like the guys from the 20th century, because then you start asking yourself, hey, wait a second, well, what does that mean? Who was she talking about? And then from there, it's just a door opener to all these nasty characters. And that's, again, I'm only one guy. I don't put myself in this place where I'm some huge, you know, I don't think I'm larger than life. You know, I'm doing what I'm doing, and it is what it is. But, you know, progressivism is not something that you should ask 10 different people and get 10 different answers. It's fairly well defined. If you were to ask 10 different people what they think about socialism, chances are you'd get a fairly similar set of answers. It should be the same way for progressivism.
Yeah, well, we're listening to WZRD Chicago 88.3 FM. My guest here is Mark. He's the keeper of the Progressing America blogspot.com website, and Mark has also been kind enough to dig up some older books on progressivism and made him his audiobooks available to him. We'll get back to him in a second on that, as I remind everybody that on January 27, 2007, WZRD Chicago was granted a license by the Federal Communications Commission to serve the public interest as a public trustee until December of 2012. And we also handle the conversations nobody else likes to touch. So go ahead, Mark, tell us some more about your Progressing America and what we can do if someone wants to go and listen to some of your audiobooks on some of these subjects on progressivism.
Well, most of my audio recordings go through LibriVox, and the reason I have chosen them is partially because they I don't even know when they started, like 5 or 6 years ago or whatever. But you know, they have a goal of trying to, and it's probably too lofty, I don't know, but it depends on how many people want to volunteer. But they want to try to record every book in the public domain as an audiobook, which I think is great. I think it's fantastic. And when I originally tried starting to educate my family about progressivism, I found it very hard. I found that members of my family are just too busy. You know, I got a member of my family that drives a semi. I have other members of my family that are single parents. People don't have time to read. But someone can listen to an audiobook. You can listen to a chapter as you drive to work, or, you know, as you prepare dinner or something. It's a great way to reorder the things you need to do in your life, or multitask. It's a great way to multitask.
Yes.
But I go through LibriVox because they already have a process in place. I can have someone volunteer to do what they call a proof listen. And what they'll do is, as they're listening to a particular chapter or segment that I record, they will have the text in front of them and say, okay, well, you missed a word here, or you're too low in this segment. Can you re-record that and make it a little bit louder? Or, whatever the case may be, audio recording is not a perfect science. I mean, you got your own talk shows, so you know.
Right.
But my goals have been, originally it started with my family, but then once I started telling some of my local Tea Party and 912 leaders what it is that I'm doing, they thought it was great because for the exact same reasons, they have people within their group that have never read the Storm Manifesto. They're aware of the contents that are in it because Glenn has talked about it so much.
Right.
It's one thing to know the concept. It's another thing to read it word for word, or in the case, now that the audiobook is done, you can listen to it.
Well, and the audiobooks I find to be very convenient. And in my case, again, I didn't have time to sit down and read Barack Obama's 2 books that he came out, which a lot of people believe were ghostwritten by Bill Ayers. But I did listen to them as audiobooks, and as I was driving, and of course I was working in the Homeland Security desk because I could speak, read, and write Arabic. They found that to be pretty useful, and I had a good understanding of the U.S. Constitution, and distinguished myself as being willing to stand up and make sure that it was defending the people's rights. So I was brought to go and be part of the stand-up of the Homeland Security Watch. Anyway, I found to be listening to his books and reading and listening, and it came across some really interesting stuff. And of course, talking about the gaps in his life, and of course, we're still trying to find out his college transcripts. But I could tell you right there from listening to the gaps that he left in his book, where he couldn't remember where he lived and couldn't explain how he got out of the country. Those would be things that you'd be absolutely denied a security clearance, even as a U.S. Senator for. Yet, as President of the United States, guess what? He's got access to it. And, conspiracy theorists can take that from anywhere. Is Bradley Manning just a big patsy for stuff that's being intentionally leaked to go and destroy relationships with the United States and other governments? How can you trust a president that he can't even be honest and frank with you and release his college transcripts, release his medical information, or even tell us where he used to live when he was in college, What do you say on that?
I find it to be very motivating. It seems like day after day, there's a new assault on our society. There's a new assault on our freedoms, and a lot of these things that are missing with respect to Obama's college transcripts, or this little piece of information or that little piece of information. I try to stay away from that stuff because, it makes for a great topic for discussion. But the problem is that, being as it's a blank slate, anybody can put any sort of information that they want on there. And you've obviously read what I do on my blog. I almost always start with an original source.
Yep.
I'll always say, well, someone so-and-so said such and such on page whatever.
Right.
I always cite the book, the paragraph, the page, and then I go on to cut and paste whatever it is that they wrote or whatever it is that they said, because a lot of speeches were given before microphones were around, and I always try to stay with the original source because I don't want to be confused with a conspiracy theorist. And there's going to come some point where people are going to say that anyways. I don't really care, but I try to do original source after original source because progressivism should be as the founding fathers of progressivism laid it out to be. It shouldn't be, well, you say progressivism is X, so that's what it is, and I say progressivism is Y. I don't want to project my opinion on progressivism any more than I know I do it on the blog, and I try not to, but I can't help it. The things that these people say is so aggravating, and so it's threatening. These people, if they had their way, we would all be serfs.
Boy, isn't that the truth? We'd be butlers for people. Yeah, it's a scary thought. Well, how do you think they should describe themselves as a fair way to describe progressivism, or do you want me to give you a couple minutes to go and if you got something already written on that?
Administrator.
So you just think the Philip Drew administrator is the way that progressives look at themselves?
In a lot of ways, yeah, I do. Because I mean, again, you can look at what Duke said. You can look at what Wilson said. Frank Goodnow is someone who's really kind of forgotten in history, but Woodrow Wilson himself stated that the only person who knows administration as well as I do is Frank Goodnow. And you see it again and again and again with progressives. When it comes to their writings, only a handful of them have actually written it. But when you look at the things that they've done over the century, again and again and again, they have this administrative group that's away from the voters. They have that administrative group. You know, they did it with FDR had all of his. He had his czars. FDR was one of the first ones to have czars. I think he was the first one. But they've been doing it all these years. And now we have Barack Obama with all of his czars and all of his groups of experts and panels. You have this new consumer something or another group that's not even accountable to Congress. It's not accountable to the presidency. It's accountable to the Federal Reserve. So you have one group of experts that's accountable to another group of experts. It's administration. It's public administration.
You know, and I like to think that a lot of the direction and financing and what have you that set us up today where we've almost got, in fact, the diversity of thought is almost non-existent on a lot of college campuses. And I tend to think that this university here, Northeastern Illinois University, we have probably a greater level of diversity because this is a commuter university. Most of our people here are students that are adults, maybe seeking secondary college degrees, or even some of them are seeking their first degree. And they've grown up already, and they're going to sit there in a classroom, and they're not going to be like an 18-year-old young skull full of mush and just absorb everything that a teacher tells them just because the teacher told them so. These are people that are going to go, wait a minute, teach, I've lived that, and no, you're full of baloney, and this is why I can go and prove it to you. And, you know, I mean, I remember challenging my professors as an adult coming back from being sent to war for Desert Storm, challenging my teachers in the classroom because I knew that I was being fed a line of bull crap, you know. And I've even done that recently here with here at our university. We're changing our curriculum from a Earth Sciences program to an Earth Studies program because, well, when it's studies, it doesn't have to be based in science and, you know, 1 + 1 = 2. We can go and just throw opinion and conjecture in there to reach our conclusions as opposed to facts that can be double-checked by others. I see that you wrote on that just recently in the last week again about what Wilson's purposes of colleges are.
Yeah, to make the father as, I don't have that up, to make the father as unlike the son as possible.
Yeah, in fact, I'll read the quote directly that you have attributed to Wilson. You've got the purpose of a university should make a son as unlike his father as possible. By the time a man is grown old enough to have a son in college, he has specialized. A university should generalize the treatment of its undergraduates and should struggle to put them in touch with every force of life. You know, I find that absolutely amazing. I mean, I understand the purpose of a university is to make our children more worldly, but to indoctrinate and manipulate them is not what I see the purpose of a university.
Yeah, I'm in college myself, and I've seen it firsthand. But the fact that you had someone actually write it down in the words that he wrote it is the reason why I keep doing this, because the answers are there. It just requires someone to go digging and dig them out.
And you know, I liked it that you brought in about Ayers and Dorn. That part of this indoctrination is what helped steer them towards being professors. And let me tell you, I mean, you know, the Chicago public schools are a shambles, and I can remember my Congress critter promoting a Bill Ayers program here and trying to get this into the Chicago schools and put people in. And I put my name on the list to be one of the people to help with it, but it was amazing. I didn't get a phone call from it. But, I'm pretty outspoken at my congressional town hall meetings, and when my congressman lies to me, I'm willing to go and call him out on it and ask him to explain how he came to that conclusion that nobody else does.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the thing, is that when you have all this stuff that's going on in colleges, and it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of disconnected. But when you look at the history of progressivism, the way I look at it is these people erase themselves from the history books for a reason. They don't want us talking about it. And to me, more than anything else, that's the big door opener. If that's what they don't want us to be talking about, then that's the first thing we need to be talking about.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct. And in fact, I have to say that's always been, I guess, my downfall in life. I guess, for one thing, whenever somebody tells me no, I want to go and find out why.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm the perfect model, for Glenn Beck's theory about question everything, even question the very existence of God, to know where you firmly stand on any issue. And that's one of the reasons why I like to be pretty open-minded and have people go and challenge me. And I enjoy having great philosophical discussions with my pals that are maybe atheists, and we can go and exchange where we are, and I don't like to try to be belligerent or mean to them. Or the same thing with people that are homosexuals. Again, I enjoy their company. I like talking with them, but I certainly don't want, and like around every woman I'm with, I want to have a sexual relationship with her. And it's the same thing with men I'm around. I mean, why can't people go and understand that there's more to life than our means of that are supposed to be perpetuating the species? But I see this where we got these lines that we're not supposed to cross. We can't go and talk about our religion without being insulting or feeling insulting or being intolerant.
Yeah, it infuriates me. That's the things that are in the news will sometimes change the course of what it is that I'm doing. One of the things that I recorded recently was what Thomas Jefferson wrote about how the courthouse in Charlottesville, when he was there, was used as the temple, the common temple. And it's like, well, wait a second. Everything that we know about the separation of church and state, this doesn't work. Either what we currently know about the separation of church and state is wrong, or what happened back then was wrong, and Thomas Jefferson is violating his own words, which we know is not true. It's clearly that we've been taught something wrong about this so-called separation.
Boy, isn't that the truth, too, the way that's been flipped? Because obviously every time government has got in bed with the church, there's been horrific things that have happened to humanity, whether it was the patriarch of the Democrat Party, Andrew Jackson, when he jumped in bed with the church and decided to go and break the treaties that we'd established with the Native Americans here in the United States and run them all off of their land, and put them on the trail to tears, And I just get the biggest laugh out of it when you take a look what's going on with this Elizabeth Warren there claiming to be 132nd Indian when even if she was 132nd Indian, I guess that George Zimmerman is more black than she's Indian, but George Zimmerman's considered a white Hispanic, but she's considered for affirmative action purposes, Native American.
All it is identity politics. I mean, it's like, the whole birtherism thing, I think, is kind of a scam, because the biggest people bringing up the birth certificate is Obama. So it's the same thing with my blog. If the progressives don't want us talking about their history, then that's the first thing we need to talk about.
Yeah.
If Obama keeps bringing up his birth certificate, then that's the last thing we should be talking about.
Yeah, you know what? You're absolutely right, and I would rather be talking about whatever happened to his legislative records when he was here in Illinois. We have a sunshine law in this state, and that stuff's supposed to be a matter of public record. So either all the laws they passed in those legislative sessions ought to be struck from the books because we have no legislative record of them, or they need to produce the legislative record. I mean, you have hit the nail on the head, and I've always, what I think that's maybe where Beck has always been on this birtherism thing too. That it's they want us to run down that path as opposed to focus on things that are more important. Going back to Wilson again, another great quote you got here from Wilson that you even highlighted, and with this quote, you won't find many reformers among the successful man. A man told me once that he left college interested in humanity. At 40, he was interested only in an industry to which he had applied himself. At 60, he was interested only in his bank account, any social change effects to that bank account. Society cannot progress without change. The relation of the university life was the relation of the conception to the act, he said, the relation of that vision to the slow, toiling process to which the end was accomplished. University Extension Society should extend the influence of the university to the general public. And I love your comment after that about reading that made your blood boil.
It does, because this whole entire thing, he's laying it out as the purpose of colleges is to indoctrinate. He's talking about this 40-year-old at 60 doesn't want social change. And that's what Woodrow Wilson wants. He wanted more than anything to fundamentally transform America, and he didn't get it done. FDR wanted to do it. He didn't get it done. He got a lot of stuff done, but he didn't do it the way, Obama wants to fundamentally transform America as well. And we got a couple more months until the election, but I don't know. I don't know what our society is going to look like in the next couple of years. But one thing that I do know is through all the readings, when I read Woodrow Wilson and Theodore Roosevelt and all these other people, when I look at what America is today versus what Woodrow Wilson tried to do back then versus what Alexis de Tocqueville wrote about in his books, the America that we have today is not what the founders gave us. And it's not a far cry for someone who believes in limited government in a small constitutional society where the government doesn't tell people much of what they have to do besides what's actually legally wrong, such as, you can't kill somebody. That's actually legally, it's actually wrong because it's the wrong thing to do, not just because, he said it's wrong. And someone who believes in small government that's read de Tocqueville could easily say, well, today's America, I don't recognize this America. This is not what the founders intended for us. I forget who it is that said the quote, that when the government fears the people, there's liberty. When the people fear the government, there's tyranny. I think that's misattributed to Jefferson. I don't know if he actually said that or not. He may have. But the point is that, all of us need to do what we need to do. We need to find something that, we need to find a way to either teach our families or go out and join a tea party or, whatever it is that you think that you need to do to make your voice be heard or to affect change, because at the rate we're going, we're on the road to serfdom. We're absolutely on the road to serfdom.
Boy, I see it every day, and I just shake my head. And when I take a look at the way that they're just running these incredible just spending orgies in Washington, and it's all got to be paid for. I'm sorry, folks, it isn't free. And I just get apparently people don't go out and shop and buy things and, sit down and have a salesman try to buy them a lunch to get it instilled into them that there's no such thing as a free lunch. And, we're getting free breakfast, lunch, and dinner from Washington, and it's not good. I was reading just yesterday that they got a plan now where they want to go and transfer all this sovereign debt from the nations to the banks and telling the banks they can keep a second set of books to keep the one set of books for maintaining whether or not you're financially solvent, but you don't have to take this sovereign debt and put it on your books. So, when you don't have any money and you don't have any money, you don't have any money. I mean, it's as serious as that. You're bankrupt.
Well, the dangerous thing about that is when it comes to the finances, the printing of money. I actually posted about this a while ago, something that John Maynard Keynes,
right.
always mess up his name. He wrote, and he attributed it to Lenin. And nobody I can't find an exact quote from Lenin, so I attributed it myself to Keynes. But he talks about how the way to change society is to print excessive amounts of money.
Sure. I mean, it destroys our savings, and it makes the value of things almost out of the price range for people. I mean, look what it did to Germany when they went, where they say just missing a simple trolley to go and take it to the bank at lunchtime. I mean, people got off at lunch break so they could run to the bank and cash their paychecks at lunch before they devaluated. And, I love the story that, I don't remember where Glenn Beck got it from, but, the guy that got $1 tip at the restaurant in Berlin, and he's looking at this dollar bill, and he brought it home to his family, and they're talking about how are they going to wisely invest this dollar bill to go and bring their family out of financial ruin. I mean, isn't that preposterous to think that we could be approaching that now?
And there's so many things that are just going on. It's very hard to keep track of everything. I'll go to read something that happened a month ago, and I'll just sit there thinking to myself, well, how come I didn't hear about this earlier? And part of it is because it's not reported correctly, but the other part of it is there's just so much going on. But what you had read earlier from my posting that Woodrow Wilson said about the colleges, here's a little bit of what Keynes wrote, and he attributed it to Lenin.
Okay.
He says, by a continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of the wealth of their citizens. They can not only confiscate, but they can confiscate arbitrarily. And while the process impoverishes many, it actually enriches some. The sight of this arbitrary rearrangement of riches strikes not only at security, but at confidence in the equity of existing distribution of wealth. And below that, he says, there is no subtle or sure means of overturning the existing basis of society than to debauch the currency. The process engages all the hidden forces of economic law on the side of destruction, and it does it in a manner which not one man in a million is able to diagnose. Now, I only read parts of it, but if for anybody that decides they want to read this, it could be written today.
Yes.
Most of the things that I'm either recording into audio or that I'm putting on blog postings, all of it could be written today, because the progressives have not really changed. Some of the things have changed. They've become a lot more. They've become a lot more Marxist. Something that what is his name? David Horowitz, I think. Yeah, David
Right.
Horowitz talks a lot about how in the '60s he was actually in the movement. I can only read these books and comment as somebody who's on the outside looking in. But Horowitz actually believed this stuff at one point, and so he's got a completely different perspective than I do. But when you look at all this stuff, it could be written today. I apologize. I lost my.
Well, no, you're right about Keynes about destroying the currency and how to do it in a backdoor, stealthy manner without the people realizing that it's being done. And I take a look at it. The other thing, what they've done here in Chicago to the mercantile exchange. My wife and I, we keep livestock, and because of what they've done to the mercantile exchange, the livestock market prices have gone insane. I slaughtered. We like to go and grow our own beef, and the steer we have for us, we know what that cow ate, so we feel healthy on it. It's part of with my working with my wife's disease, to get better control over our food sources too, is part of our big push for this, and kind of the fun of growing your own critters too. But when I called the butcher to go slaughter it, he's looking at me and was like, why are you slaughtering this? You ought to take it to the marketplace, because they're getting over $6 a pound hoof weight for these. Why would you want it? I'm like, well, he's valuable to us as far as we know what's in it, but we haven't seen the true price of food inflation, because when all these livestock producers were just liquidating their herds when the price of grain went out of control, that they were just dumping livestock onto the market, and they've all ended up in the freezers, and there are dollar value meal hamburgers these days. But that supply is running out. Fresh meat is almost gone.
That's exactly what happens with the money printing. Keynes, that's in one of the paragraphs that Keynes writes about how prices continually rise, and people start blaming the quote-unquote rich for profiteering, and they're not profiteering at all. All that's happening is inflation is not actually the price of products going up. What inflation actually is when the value of the dollar goes down.
Yes, it is. That's why the price of gas is so expensive. We should be paying like 99 cents a gallon in the true marketplace right now for gas.
We should definitely be paying less.
Yeah, and instead, because of the devaluation of the U.S. dollar. And you know what? When I looked to go, we raise goat livestock for market, and I looked up the price of what a goat went for in the time when we were taking off the from in 1964 when we took silver, when we quit coining our silver, and what a price of a goat was back then. And I pegged my price to goat hoof weight on silver, and you know what? Every time I check the marketplace prices for livestock, guess what the going price for a goat is? If I went and did the dollar value of what silver is, that's how I get my market weight for goat. So let's say 20 cents for 100 pounds worth of goat, or 20 cents in silver, or 20 cents in U.S. face value for a goat, or 20 cents in what its value is, when it was, $60 an ounce for silver, I mean, this is what they've done to destroy the marketplace. And it's pretty, the precious metals, they're responding in price up and down based on, how the U.S. dollar value is competed in the marketplace.
The real evil is you've got someone like George Soros sitting there helping to make this stuff happen. And the guy that broke the Bank of England is about to break the Bank of America. I'm going to have to go in a minute.
Say again?
I said I'm going to have to go in a minute.
Oh, okay.
I got to get to my homework.
Okay. Well, you know what? I was absolutely surprised that you appear to be kind of a young person here, Ron, and to have such a pretty good knowledge of this. You don't mind sharing your age with us, do you?
What was that?
You don't mind sharing your age with our audience, do you?
I would prefer not to give out any information.
Well, yeah. I can understand when there's
I've been for a while, worried about the whole Kenneth Gladney thing, but now that you've got Brett Kimberlin out there,
right?
There's got to be more guys out there that are subversive, that are looking for any way to try to get at somebody and take them down. And I really don't want that. I mean, I've made my bed, and I'll lie in it, whatever. But the last thing I need is for someone, doing that kind of thing with my grandparents.
Well, no, and I know exactly what you mean, and that's okay. You don't have to share your age, and that's why we've kept with your name being Mark here on it. And yeah. Kimberlin's a really scary critter, because here's a guy that I thought, I can remember him doing his speedway bombings, and to think that he's not only out of jail, but he's being funded by Soros, he's being funded by Tides Foundation, he's being funded by Barbara Streisand. So, these are some really, and to think that these people are giving their money away to go and support somebody who was terrorizing people. What is their plan? What is their end game? Are they trying to go and cause that world war where the whole Earth's on fire, or they can go and pull out their hammers and reshape the planet?
They'll support anybody that supports larger government. I mean, you think to yourself, why would a communist support an Islamist? But I mean, look at what they're doing over in Egypt. They're not interested in smaller government. They have their own plan for bigger government. In the end, the communists and the Islamists are going to duke it out. But for now, they both agree that we have to establish a bigger government so that we can tell the little people how to live. And it's the same thing here in America. A guy like Brett Kimberlin, he's got a shady past, but he helps us get our agenda along. So we're going to support him. And that's the thing, someone like me, I'm not going to sit down. I mean, I'm going to protect myself and do whatever I have to do. But, in the end, I mean, I'm not going to comply. You know, I'm going to be one of those people that I'll be with the Tea Party for as long as, you know, as long as whatever's going on. I will be making my voice heard the way that I've chosen to do so.
And, you know, I have to say, it is a very scary world where they're using we no longer have a justice system. In fact, I'm not sure if you follow Ann Barnhart at all. Do you know who I'm talking about, Ann Barnhart? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
What was that? No, I don't read much from Ann Barnhart.
Okay. Well, she's pretty much of the opinion that the First Republic of the United States is dead, and she points out that how they've totally just progressed away from the U.S. Constitution, and that there's no justice, that someone like John Corzine, after looting the segregated customer accounts at MF Global here in Chicago. I mean, they actually had, you know, it's like the same as a parking garage foreclosing, and then the people that buy the bankruptcy thing, all the people's private cars that are parked there in the garage, that they go and they take them even though they don't own title to them, and they turn around and sell them, which is theft, and then the police don't do anything to go and prosecute the thieves. And she's saying, you know, this nation exists to go and prevent the rights of the little guys, and instead all it's doing is protecting the rights of the oligarchy, which is John Corzine and all the political class people here. And myself, I'll tell you what, I don't have a whole lot of faith in Mitt Romney either as a choice over Barack Obama, because everything I don't like and fear about Barack Obama, Mitt Romney is already pulled, you know, with, you know, as a progressive governor in the state of Massachusetts. Would you agree with me that Romney is a progressive governor?
He says it himself. He says, you know, my views are progressive. So I mean, why? It's really not any different than Mr. Wilson. Why should I project anything upon Mitt Romney when he himself says he's a progressive?
I'm with you, and you know, his first thing that really ticked me off was the way I saw he did by executive order that he instituted homosexual unions in the state of Massachusetts. Now, myself, I'm thinking that that's something the legislature should have voted on, but instead, him by executive order, he imposed it on the state of Massachusetts. So we got our first, you know, homosexual union state here in the United States, thanks to Mitt Romney. So, you know. That's one of the things that made me very, very, and I was opposed to him. I mean, that's why I supported, you know, in fact, my favorite candidate in the previous election, that was Duncan Hunter, but it's amazing, even though he had more delegates than Rudy Giuliani had 0 delegates. Duncan Hunter had 7, but Duncan Hunter wasn't allowed to go in and participate in the debates, you know, so it goes to show you how unbiased Fox News was, right?
Yeah, well, you know, we have a lot of work to do as citizens, as individuals, and you know, we just have to find what it is that we need to do. I apologize. I need to get off the phone here. Well,
I appreciate it, and it's been great that you participate in the show, and thank you very much. Keep blogging. And how do we spell the name of the website that we can go and listen to some of the books that you've already read and for this?
Is progressingamerica.blogspot.
Right.
Do you actually want me to spell it?
No, I meant the was it Leverbox that you do the books, the audio books for, where some of these rare books that aren't readily available people can listen to?
It's librbox.org.
Liberbox?
librbox.org.
Libribox.
Yes, sir.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you very much, Mark, and keep the faith there.
The opportunity, sir.
And thank you for joining us here at the Wizard at WZRD. We appreciate that you took the time with us today.
Thank you, sir. Have a good day.
Okay. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview with our guest here this morning at WZRD. And in fact, that was quite a surprise. I didn't realize that he was such a young fella and involved in doing the audiobooks. But I'll tell you what, I am amazed how much writing he does and how many things he's overturning with the progressive agenda.